like to think that I go through life not having too many enemies. Like, I used to be a people pleaser, like to my core, right? I would just try to make everybody happy. And maybe it's like being the youngest of three siblings or the only girl in the family. I don't know, but I was always the people pleaser. So I don't think I have a ton of enemies, but today we are talking about the common enemy of content launch success. And I want you to take two approaches to this, and it's really just based on where you are in your journey. So, when I'm using the word launch today, I want you to think of, are we talking about your content actually launching out into the world? Or are we talking about launching something, your product, your service, whatever the thing is that you want to sell, and incorporating that into your content? Because we have a question from the community today that is so good. It's one that I get all the time. It's why I picked it, because it's a common theme around here. We've actually talked about launching so much, but we're going to really dive into what I do when I plan launches. But again, what you can use, like use the word launch pretty loosely today, because this isn't an episode just for those that have already had a podcast for several years and now you're actually launching products and services and doing webinars and all these other complicated marketing strategies. This could also be something that's aspirational to someone that's just getting started with their content. So again, use the word launch as you will today, but let's get right to it. Welcome back. If we have not met, I am Crystal Prophet. I'm your podcast coach, your content strategist, and your content therapist, because we are trying to help you work on your relationship with your content. And today is no different than any other day when we're trying to really dig into the nuances that is a content creator's journey. So whether you're a podcaster, you're a YouTuber, you're a blogger, you're trying to meld all those worlds together and figure out like how this could really work for you. But specifically because we're recording this towards the end of 2024, a lot of you are thinking about, well, what am I going to do in 2025? Maybe you've already, figured out your promotional calendar for the next 6 months or the next year. And you're thinking, okay, I know I want to launch some things in 2025. Maybe it's your first piece of content. Maybe it's your first digital product. Maybe it's a full-blown membership with all kinds of, moving pieces and parts that you're still trying to figure out. But launching is really the theme of today. And like I kind of teased earlier, we have a question from the community, and this is from Hannah. So shout out to Hannah Gill. She has the Motherhood Flow podcast, and she's been in our communities for a long time. And Hannah says, I feel like I need more in-depth information on how to strategically plan my content when I have launches and stuff involved. I'm so bad about actually planning out my content and just put out whatever I get done first. So Hannah, I want to just say thank you so much for your question and let you know it's one of those things like you're not alone. Like this is one of those, like, I feel like everyone does this until they find their groove, right? Because there's stages when it comes to content creation. You are just throwing spaghetti against the wall. You're just trying to figure out like, what microphone do I use? Like, what is my first 5 episodes going to be about? Like, am I going to do solo? Am I going to do interviews? Where am I going to find people to interview? What does this look like? Yada, yada, yada. And then you have all the comparison, like psychological stuff that you have to work through. Like some of you are nodding really aggressively right now because you're in that stage right now. And I just want to say, like, can you just applaud yourself for a second? Like, I don't think we do this enough where we just stop and say, oh, I'm entering the next chapter of my content where you have been doing it consistently. So I chat with Hannah a lot. She's actually been a member of our Profit Podcasting program, and she comes to our monthly coaching calls. And, now we have Podcasters Connect. So I hope to see Hannah show up there too, because she's actively asking questions and trying to figure out her strategy, and she's stayed consistent. And I want to break down what I mean by that, because it's not just consistent and let's just throw something out there for the sake of publishing something. She's actively trying to figure out, how do I get better at this? How do I make this more impactful? Because if I'm going to show up and do this thing, I want to make sure that it's having an impact on my business or the influential circles I'm trying to build. So again, I just want to like give you some kudos, Hannah, because I know you are working hard to figure this out. But when you enter the next phase of you've launched your initial content, now you're consistently publishing. Now it's like, well, how do I take a step back and be more intentional and strategic with every single piece of content? I have to tell you, I mean, I've been podcasting since 2018. I've been publishing on YouTube consistently since around 2019. And it took me a hot minute to figure this out because for a while, I was just trying to figure out the right cadence for myself. Do I do one episode a week? Should I do 2 episodes a week? I mean, y'all, in 2021, I know this was pure craziness. I was doing 2 podcast episodes a week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. I was doing 3 YouTube videos a week. Yes, 3. Then I was doing 5 daily podcast episodes, like Monday through Friday. I was putting out one every single day. I mean, it was just so much content. And then I was in that phase of just throwing spaghetti against the wall, like, you know, and I was going live. So I was like, what's working? Like, what are people actually responding to? And it was one of those things where I was like, man, this is going to really help me figure out faster what I should actually be talking about or what I like to talk about. And so I throw that out not as like, oh, this is the recipe for you to figure out how to do it. But when you get to the stage that you've created enough content and you can take a step back and you can look at the ideas that you have ahead of you and say, oh, I know that that will take me about 20 minutes to record that idea that I have, or that'll take me about a 45-minute conversation with this one expert. You start to kind of zoom out at a 10,000 foot level, right? Where you can see, oh, here's where I can connect to the dots to this and then to that. And I know I want to promote this one thing in the summertime. And then I think I want to do this other thing around, you know, the next fall break, or maybe this is in the spring, or maybe like you're going to be the only one that knows the expert of your business. If there's a seasonality to it, or if there's certain yearly promotions that you want to include and talk about. And so I bring that up. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of what this actually means, but I wanted to just give you a high level of if you feel yourself so down in the weeds, I need you to zoom out today. You've got to zoom out because that's the only way that strategic planning and looking at your content from a different lens is going to be helpful. So we actually have 4 segments that we're going to go through today. And the first one is we're going to talk about why strategic content planning is crucial. It's crucial. We kind of touched on a little bit of it already, like the zooming out piece, but let's start with why, right? So planning your strategic content isn't just about checking a box or staying consistent. It's about creating a journey for your audience. So when people come to me and they say, well, Crystal, I feel really uncomfortable promoting my product or doing this affiliate thing. Like I feel like I'm bugging my audience. I don't want to just be salesy in everything that I do. Let me stop you right there. Okay. Because when that starts to feel weird and awkward is when it is not connected back to your content. Or it is something that you're like, oh, somebody asked me to be affiliate for this thing and I'm going to promote it. It doesn't really make sense for my audience, but I can sure make some money. So I'm just going to do it anyway. And that's probably where you are, Hannah, right? Like maybe you've found yourself in some opportunities where you're like, okay, I'm an affiliate for this thing, but I want to do my own thing, but I don't know how to promote these things without overwhelming my audience. So either one, you just don't do it. You don't promote anything. And then you're like, I'm not making any money to sustain this thing that I'm really enjoying doing. Or the other thing is that you're promoting too much where people are unsubscribing from your emails or they're not interested in what you're talking about on Instagram. So your engagement tanks. And so there is a fine place to go like from just winging it to actually making an impact and not having so many missed opportunities with all the things that you're throwing out there. You're just confusing your audience because they're like, wait, you were just talking about this, but now you're promoting that. Like, what's the actual right thing that's really good for me to do or the next step? Because they're looking to you as the expert in your field to help them really like dial in on the things that you believe will be helpful for them and their next step of the journey. So, great example, right? When this episode releases, we're going to be talking about our Podcasters Connect community. You've already heard me talking about this. Like, this is a great, like, super meta example of a launch. I knew I wanted to move all of my products and services, everything I had, from one platform to another. And then I thought, well, I want to do a launch, but I don't want to wait until January, which is when I know that a lot of people would be interested in a podcast course or, a membership that can help them and support them in a podcast. Like, I didn't want to wait until January because I made this decision in September. Like, full transparency, right? Like, I made this hard decision in September. I was like, no, we're going to be done with this other platform. We're moving over to Mighty Networks. And that's like signed, sealed, delivered. That's what's happening. And I didn't want to say, okay, but I'm just going to be sitting here for a few months. So what I knew I needed to do with my content is I looked at my content calendars, right? One for podcasts, one for YouTube. I looked at all of them and I said, okay, I need to align that whatever topics we cover for the next few months have to do with podcasting in the sense that it's going to make sense to this audience. And you're going to be interested to learn more about what Podcasters Connect can do for you. Or if you're already a member, you're like, oh, what do I have to look forward to? And it wasn't just like, oh, we're just going to talk about sponsorships for the next few months, or we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, like SEO. SEO is fantastic. SEO is great. We should absolutely talk about SEO, but it's not something that I want to cover while I'm in the middle of this launch because I don't want you to get confused. I don't want you to feel this like disjointed, like, well, Crystal's promoting this SEO tool, but she's talking about podcasting here. And then this other marketing strategy is coming along, but does that make sense for what I'm doing? Like, it could get so confusing really fast. And so one thing that I do, Hannah, that I am going to absolutely recommend is zoom out. Again, the 10,000 foot view. Look at what do you want to do in 2025, right? What are the things that you know you want to happen? And you've probably heard me say this, but I love to think in 90 days at a time. So I look at quarters of the year. I actually need to buy my 2025 wall calendar where it will literally have like every single quarter of the year at a glance. I can see, okay, I'm promoting this in January. I'm promoting that in February. I'm not doing any promotions in March, or I can sneak in this little email promotion and then I can go quarter by quarter of the year and see what am I doing? And then I plan my content around that. Because if you've been around here for any time, you know that I love to have a bucket of ideas for what content we can talk about. So Hannah's a great example. Hannah's question today. I grabbed this question, and I actually don't have the date in front of me. I grabbed this question several months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Hannah asked this question, and I was like, oh, this is a fantastic question. We're going to do community shout outs. When should I do this? I was like, this would be perfect for right around the time that we're launching Podcasters Connect, because Hannah's been a, loyal member of this community for a long time. And it's a really great question because it's the time of year when people are launching. So you see, I know I got super meta on this, but I really just truly believe for you, Hannah, specifically, like get in there, do an hour-long brain dump or do 30 minutes, whatever. Like you have Profit Podcasting, go into the module where you are like, you're meant to go and find your first 20 ideas. Go through that exercise again if you're coming up blank, and then you have 2 lists. Think of you have two lists in front of you. One is all of your ideas and the other is all the things that you want to promote. Where is there overlap? Where is there something that you can tie together a theme and say, oh, this is about this, so I can actually talk about this topic around the time that I want to do it, because then it would feel natural. Then it would make sense. It would be so easy to slip that into a podcast episode or mention it in your newsletter, and it doesn't feel like this weird disjointed thing. So that's the high level of why strategic content planning is so important. But let's move on to segment 2. So segment 2, the 3 phases of launch content planning. And this is like, again, for super, super simplified. If you are in Profit Podcasting, then like how I feel about launching and like the real strategy that you should do it. We talk about all the calendars that you should consider and all the different things that you should look at. So revisit that module if you have not launched and you're a profit podcasting student. But let's just do a quick like 1, 2, and 3. Like, what are the 3 phases? 1, you have a pre-launch. Next, you have launch week, and then the post-launch. So when I think of pre-launch, so what I did, again, we're using Podcasters Connect launch as an example. I knew in September that I was moving to this new platform, right? I moved everything over to Mighty Networks. And then I said, okay, I want to do a release on Black Friday. I think that would be super fun. Like, it's always this really electric time where, people are really interested. Like, oh, what are the cool things I got to snag? What are the great deals? And I was like, this would be a fantastic way to kind of soft launch to my audience. And then I can plan for a larger launch in January, but I'd be able to learn some things along the way. So I actually planned out a calendar, and y'all, I totally, like, full transparency, I relied on ChatGPT. I was like, okay, look, I want to launch on this date, and I had it build out a marketing plan based on how much time I had, how much effort I was willing and able to put into the launch. So like working on this no more than 5 hours a week, I had it spit out a marketing plan. I mean, it was so incredible. And then I filled in the blanks. I was like, okay, I got to write emails. I got to create graphics. I need to understand my audience better. I needed to price this thing. I needed to create a landing page. I needed to do this. Like, I had it really drill down all the tasks that were related to the launch. And then I just worked backwards from the date that I knew I wanted to launch it to the day that I was starting to work on the launch. Then I took all that information, slapped it in Asana, and then like, here we are. Like, best approach to launching, period, the end. And it's how I do all of my launches. So that's just like a quick little sneak peek into my launch brain. But that's like 6 to 8 weeks before you're going to launch something, Hannah. You want to go ahead and seed like, okay, I know I want to launch this thing. Or maybe you know the date from an affiliate program you're doing. So great example for me. I promote B School, I promote DCA, I promote like all of these programs that have like a cart open and a cart closed. So I know the content that is going to be published at that time needs to be focused on either my previous experience with that, the content related about it. And it really, like, there's no room for a random interview during that week or the week before, the week after. Like, there's no room for that. And there's no room for a topic that I was just like, oh, that would be a great idea. Cause yeah, I have lots of ideas like that, but those are probably better suited for those summer episodes where I may not have as many promotions. So it's not like it's a bad idea, right? You're having all these content ideas, just throw it into your content calendar and mark it for the summer. Right. And I know people will say, well, Crystal, I don't plan that way, or I can't plan that far in advance. Yes, you can. Have you tried? Like, have you tried? When people tell me they can't do it, I'm like, well, have you actually tried? Have you tried to do that before? Have you looked at all the ideas that you have and then put a placeholder in your calendar? Will it change? Absolutely. Will something come up? Sure. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to set this calendar and it's going to be perfect, but at least it's something and you can know those dates. So that's the first part of the pre-launch. Then you have actual launch week. And I love to have most things done before you get to that launch week so that you can have wiggle room to do some fun engagement stuff. So I know Hannah's been working on launching her own programs and things that she's doing on her own. So Hannah, if you are in the middle of your own launch week, you don't want to be recording next week's podcast episode that may or may not be related to this topic. You want to have that already buttoned up and done so that when you are ready to crash and burn and like face plant into your bed at the very end of that launch, you're not like, oh my God, I have to record next week's episode. This is all lessons learned. Let me tell you, because I made the mistake a few years ago and actually talked about this on Empire Secrets. So Mariana Henninger, so if you remember a few episodes back, she came onto our show and then I went onto her show and we talked about launching. And I was in the middle of a DCA launch and I did my interview with her. It was right at the end. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I don't know why I scheduled this interview. I usually don't do that. And I was like, oh yeah, because everything else was done. Everything was done. I was at the tail end of that launch, there was nothing else I could do because I'd done all this work leading up to that point in the launch that I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like I can just, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Because I was excited to talk to her when she reached out. So I think that oh my gosh, I cannot say that. Leaving some wiggle room for you to do fun things, whether it's like hopping on a random Zoom call or going live on Instagram or doing something fun like that, then making some room for launch week can be just really powerful. And of course, you should be talking nonstop about whatever it is that you are selling and promoting. And then you have the post launch, right? So remember, we're talking about the 3 phases of the launching your content planning and what that looks like. And the post launch is, what are you doing afterwards? And I got to tell y'all have heard me talk about Coach Jen before. So shout out to Coach Jen. She helped me in 2023. We met for several sessions. So she is a coach and she helped me so much get over this. I don't know if it was fear is the right word. It was definitely avoidance. I had this total avoidance with doing like a post-launch debrief. I didn't want to do it. And I don't know if it was just the numbers or what it was, but I just felt so overwhelmed because I was like, I did all this planning, I did the actual thing, and then now like I'm done. I'm ready to move on. It's like I was sick of it. I was sick of whatever it was that I was launching, whether it was my own stuff or someone else's. I was just done. I wanted like, can we move on to the next shiny object? And then what I realized, this was mostly for a lot of my affiliate launches, that I needed to be doing it in real time and uploading content. So whether it was metrics that were happening in real time, like at the end of the day, I could know, well, how many people clicked on this? How many people purchased? How many people opted in? How many people opted out? Like we could do those real-time updates the day, like day 1 of the launch, day 2 of the launch, day 3, instead of waiting until the very end and then feeling so overwhelmed where you're just like, you have that faceplant moment of, I don't want to look at this again. I'm done. I don't want to do any of it. So the thing that helped me so much is making it fun. So we found like a fun spreadsheet, like y'all have probably seen it. If you're in the Business Booster bundle, you for sure have this. This is a product, and we'll link to it in the show notes. This was something I developed this last year that I love so much because it's all of my spreadsheets. If you've heard me talk about spreadsheets and you're like, I don't have those, I need those, then check out the Business Booster bundle because in there I break down like tab by tab what I use for my launches. And it is just the biggest lifesaver because now when I go to launch B School again, when I go to launch Podcasters Connect, when I launch, DCA, I can go look at my previous launches and say, okay, look, this is how many people unsubscribe from our email list. I don't love that part of it, but at least I can see like, this is probably going to happen again. I can see how many people clicked on the sales page on day 1, or I can see how many sales we got by the end of it, how many were full pay, how many were half pay, how many like people came in from a certain like lead magnet or part of the funnel because we tracked all of that stuff. So Hannah, I know again, this is like, might feel a little overwhelming because we're diving into the deep trenches of launching just right now, but I want to just go back to the post-launch piece of it and giving yourself that permission to just take a deep breath, relax after a launch. And I always make sure that if I'm in the middle of a launch, I'm looking at my calendar and I'm like, okay, cart close, whether it's for my stuff or someone else's, is on this date. I don't want to have to record that next episode. So give yourself the gift, right? This is the gift, like black out the week after a launch so that I'm not recording. There's no interviews that week. There's nothing. We are in recovery mode. So whether you want to record a super easy episode or you want to record something and batch it before and then you use that after, like you could record an interview before and then use it afterwards, but we're not creating anything new right after a launch. No. You're going to give yourself a break, debrief, dig into those stats, dig into those things that maybe feel a little like, ugh, for you. And if that's you, then you just need to go get my Business Booster bundle because it will be so much more helpful. So that's the 3 stages of launch content planning. Think about it 6 to 8 weeks before the pre-launch, then you have your launch week, then you have your post-launch. Now, the third segment. So we're going to go step by step a little bit into the content planning process, but I'm going to like super high level because we've already talked about a little bit of this. Step 1 is mark your calendar and work backwards. Seriously, whatever date, it can move, right? Especially if it's your own launch. I see this happen all the time, or people are like, God, I thought I was going to launch it this time, but a kid got sick. I got sick. Like I physically cannot show up to a webinar, or I cannot get out of bed. So I'm going to have to move my launch around. But at least have that date on the calendar that you're working towards. That is your goal. And then work backwards to see like, what are the things that you need to do leading up to that? That's step 1. Mark your calendar and set that date. Step number 2 is brainstorm and batch create. So Hannah, if you like, let's say you want to launch something in March, right? I'm just grabbing a date out in the future. You want to launch something March 2025. So you picked your date and now you're working backwards. Brainstorm. Again, brainstorm those ideas. If you're like, okay, I want to have my launch date be here. So the previous 3 to 4 episodes need to be things that are related to that product, that service, whatever it is that you're launching. So again, it's not confusing. So just earmark it. Like literally, I will put on there DCA promo, Podcasters Connect promo, and I will just those are my placeholders in my content calendar so that I know when I go and start plugging things in, like, oh, here's a great idea. Or Hannah asked a great question in the community. I go to my content calendar and I say, oh, well, I can't really talk about this until after that launch or after these 4 things happen. So, okay, I'm going to throw that like right there, right around Black Friday. That sounds like a fantastic place to ask that question. So make sure, again, you have those lists. We talked about your list earlier. You're brainstorming in the list of what you're launching. Make sure that you can align and tie those 2 together. Then the third part is repurposing your content. Okay. Like every single piece of content that you create can be repurposed in some way. And especially if you're launching something more than once. And I love the idea of using stories from people in your community and talking about them during your launch. So this is specifically if you're launching your own product or service, right? So if you have testimonials, really cool stories that you want to share, then talk about them during your launch. Talk about them leading up to your launch. Interview those people as you are getting closer to launching, because I mean, it just adds so much more value. It's not just another interview. It's like an interview intentionally placed in the launch content that you're putting out to really tie those pieces together for your audience. Again, so they'll care about the story that they're hearing, but also they're like, oh, they got those results because they bought that thing. Maybe I should buy that thing. Maybe that's the perfect thing for me and the thing in the next step of my journey. So repurposing content all across the board. I have so much more content. You can check out the YouTube videos that we've done about repurposing because there's a lot. There's a lot in batch planning, planning, content calendars, all of that. It's all on the YouTube channel and on the podcast. But then step 4 in really going through the step-by-step content planning process is leaving room for flexibility, right? So plan for 80% and then leave 20% for magic or pivots or real-time audience engagement, because those are super fun. I did a bunch of Facebook Lives with Marie Forleo this year. I know. I feel like I'm bragging at this point because that was so incredible, completely unexpected. Her team reached out to me. So Danny, shout out to Danny on Team Forleo. She presented this opportunity to affiliates and she was like, hey, Marie's going to do these Facebook Lives. You're going to be like 15 minutes. And I was like, yes, please. Like sign me up immediately. So I actually got to do 2 separate Facebook Lives with Marie Forleo, one of my mentors. And it was so incredible, but I hadn't planned for that. So all of a sudden I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I release this as a bonus? Do I scrap the episode that I had and like just take that live and put it in the podcast? Like, what do I do with this? I ended up using it as a bonus content, but it was so awesome. But if I was so rigid about what I was doing, I would have said, I don't know how that's going to work into my system, or I don't know how to do it. No, when Marie Forleo asks you if you want to do an Instagram live, you say yes. This is always the answer, okay? It is always to say yes for it. So that's just high level, step-by-step content planning. Now, fourth segment, right? I know we're getting to the point where it's like, oh God, Crystal, this is a masterclass. I know this is like, buckle up. Hannah, I hope that you are appreciating this and you're writing some notes on this. All right. But step 4, segment 4 of this is overcoming overwhelm. Y'all know we talk about burnout. We talk about so many things. I'm going to lean on ChatGPT for this, like real hard. Okay. Because I use ChatGPT. If we pull back the curtain and we look at the Podcasters Connect launch, I used it to help me figure out my customer avatars, my pricing, my sales page. I used it to help me write my emails. It helped me write my marketing plan. It helped me write so many things. And I am heavily reliant on AI and using these tools that can help me do it that much faster. And I ask it to build out a calendar for me. So it's not just like it's spitting out all this stuff that you have to do. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. I say, no. You're my project manager. Turn this into a timeline that I can do. I'm only going to dedicate 5 hours a week to making this happen. And I want you to make it to where I can import it into Asana. Yes, like we're talking that detailed and it works. And it is so incredible. So lean on those tools that can really help you. And if you have questions, reach out. Like this is seriously, I know I've talked about Podcasters Connect so many times, but this is where you can reach out to your community and say, hey, I'm stuck on this, or I have an idea, or what do y'all think about this? Like that's what the community is there for. So I want you to go check it out. But before we get to that, let's go do a quick recap. Okay. So from today, the key takeaways we have: start planning your content early and tie it back to your goals. Like I said, this is a great time. You're probably planning for 2025. Like look at when you're planning your content, what are your goals? I look at my content calendar every single week. I look at my yearly promotions every single week because I want to make sure that they are tied, they are aligned. It's not something you do that's a one and done and you just forget about it and never look at it again. You should be looking at this all the time. Then the second piece is using the 3 phases: the pre-launch, the launch, and the post-launch when you're thinking about planning your content and what you have, right? So remember, it's not just the week that you're launching stuff. It's what are you doing leading up to that launch that's going to make a bigger impact and really tie those through lines together for your audience. And then the third thing is leverage batching, templating, tools, accountability, like whatever you need to stay consistent and really see the launch through to the end. Launching is hard, y'all. It's so hard. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's one of those things where I just crash and burn whenever I'm done, but it is so worth it to create communities of people that you can add value to. You can actually help them and support them in really beautiful ways. And this is, again, it's going to be a plug for Podcasters Connect because that's exactly what we are building. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/join, JOIN, to learn more about Podcasters Connect. So what this is this is our community where we have invited all of our previous podcasting, profit podcasting students, everybody that's ever bought a tool on Profit Media. Like so many of y'all are already hanging out there and it's really fun to see. We are just in the beginning stages and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm hiring on moderators that can help us run this community and make it this beautiful place where you can grow and connect without the distractions that you have in a Facebook group or, another community online where you're just like, oh, I want to go in there, but I also don't want to see all the hot garbage that's out there on Facebook or other places. I'll quit bashing on Facebook, right? I'm going to get flagged on something, but I just want to say that planning isn't glamorous and launching isn't necessarily glamorous, but it's one of those things that you can absolutely do right. And you can do it. I'm just, dare I say it, in a really fun way if you have a community of people walking along beside you doing it. So go to Podcasters Connect, learn more about it, crystalprofit.com/join. We have our Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal going on right now where it is a half price off right now for our founding members. And that's going to be like, come join us. We're doing our first coaching call on Friday, December 6th, where we're all going to get together. We're going to talk about planning. Like if this really got your juices flowing on what you can do, this is literally like we're workshopping all of this for our first coaching call. And I'm going to show you exactly what we are doing here at Profit Media to prepare for 2025. I'm going to show you my content calendars. I'm going to show you my promotions. I'm going to show you all the affiliates that I'm working with, where I'm going to figure out, well, how am I going to use that and kind of intersperse mini launches throughout the year so that the business is continuously making money without these huge launches that require a huge lift. So again, go to crystalprofit.com/join to learn more about the founding members price and all the other things that we have. But this was so much fun. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I want to know your comments. I want to know what questions you have, because you could be featured on the show just like Hannah. And we're going to have questions like this in Podcasters Connect, where I ask you questions and I love your feedback. We're going to be doing content audits in there as well for our premium members. And then, of course, monthly group coaching. But just go check it out. Go check it out. But that's all I have for you today. So make sure you hit that follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and listening today. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.